recorded, and we'll get you a link. I have 15 things open now. Let me get the live stream in the background so I can see you again.
And all these people have been reading a book about a witch, Circe?
Yes, yes.
Because I didn't read the book.
That's fine. You don't need to. It's a, she is a witch. So that's one of the themes. Okay, looks like the stream is.
Because I'm going to talk about the history, and then I'm going to talk about modern witches, who they are, and yeah.
That's how we described your talk. So, and I do have a kind of a lengthy, I pulled some information that I saw on this, so hopefully you're comfortable with that.
I didn't see it. I haven't.
Let me read you that part.
Okay.
It says, Ellen is an author of both fiction and nonfiction, an herbalist, a lay homeopath, a lecturer, and a mental health counselor who lives and works in Western Massachusetts. She's the author of several books and audio tapes on paganism and druidry and 3 novels. Then I was going to mention your website. I mean, there's nothing that's inaccurate in that. Okay.
No, it sounds fine. Okay. Yeah.
I was looking through my notes. I'm like, you didn't actually send me I know we have your book, but I didn't look in there to see if there was a intro. So basically, once we go live, and I'll give it a few more minutes, make sure that it's actually, okay, when we start, I guess it'll start to record. Once we go live, I will be doing the introduction. And then normally I would turn off my camera, but you've asked me not to do that. So that's fine. I will stay.
Well, I think
I will stay on screen.
It's always more interesting if there's 2 heads rather than just one. I think.
Sure. Do you want me to break in if there's, the questions?
Yes, if there's a question,
I won't break in with silliness, but if there's something that.
Yeah, because it determines where I go with the talk.
Okay. Yeah. And, okay.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Sounds fine. Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else you want to review before I take us live?
No, I guess not.
All right. This should be exciting. And I'm glad that we got a nice audience for it tonight. So, and your check will be forthcoming. We put it through City Hall and they send out the checks. So break a leg, I guess is all I can say to you.
Okay. Oh, and one thing you could do is give me a warning at the end.
Yes. Okay. Keep an eye on the time. You mean? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep it to? We advertise it like an hour and a half, but it doesn't necessarily have to go that long. I mean, if it looks like it's going longer, I can give you some notes about time. How's that?
No, an hour and a half is good.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. I'm going to bring in everybody else and start here. Okay. So I see we are recording, and here come our attendees. So once we actually get to 7 o'clock, we shall start.
Do I need to press something?
No, you're fine. Do you see the attendees? People are coming in. We're up to 13.
Yeah, but I see a box that says this meeting is being recorded. It's a big white box and I can't see you anymore or me. Should I click continue?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't want it to blow up or something.
That's fine. Welcome as folks are joining us here. We're just going to wait till 7 o'clock. Which means we have about 2 more minutes, but thank you for taking some time this evening to join us for the program. We're working out our technical difficulties. This evening's program will also be live streamed on the library's Facebook page. So if you have friends who couldn't sign up in time, just quickly send them a text and tell them to go to the Attleboro Public Library's Facebook page and they can watch along with us. And it'll also be picked up and broadcast by our local cable channel, DoubleACS. So we will give it another minute and then we will get started. You should all have access to the Q&A box. So throughout the presentation, if you have questions, feel free to put them in there, or you can put items in chat as needed. And my role tonight, after I introduce our speaker, will be to monitor those two areas. So please do feel free to communicate. If you don't see me paying attention or if I'm missing you, use the little raise hand signal to clue me in that there's something there. Okay. Give it one more minute and we will go live. Okay, it is now 7 o'clock, so we shall begin. So officially, good evening and thank you for joining us. Folks from the Attleboro Public Library probably know me, but we did a lot of marketing, so I'm hoping we've reached out to some other folks as well. I'm Chris Johnson, the director at the Attleboro Public Library. The other lovely face on the screen is our speaker this evening. That's Ellen Everett Hoffman. Ellen is an author of both fiction and nonfiction, an herbalist, a lay homeopath, a lecturer, and a mental health counselor who lives and works in Western Massachusetts. She is the author of several books and audio tapes on paganism and Druidry and 3 novels. You may visit Ellen's website. It's at elleneveretthoffman.com, and I will put that into the chat once we get started, to learn more about Ellen, to follow her blogs, and to purchase her books. Tonight's presentation, A History of Witch Persecution, is based on Ellen's book, The Real Witches of New England. You may purchase a copy from Ellen's website, or you can request one. Thank you for the nice modeling there, Vanna. Or request one from the library, as we have just added 3 copies to our collection. As mentioned, please use the Q&A box to enter any questions that you may have during and at the end of the presentation. We are planning for about 90 minutes this evening, so hopefully you can join us for the full thing, but we are recording. So if you do have to leave early, feel free to then visit the Big Read website for the link, and I will give that information as well shortly. Tonight's presentation is just one of over 25 programs and book discussions based on the themes of this year's NEA Big Read. I managed to bring home my banner and hang it up. Attleboro title this year, we're reading Circe. Let's see if I can hold that the right direction for the camera. Circe, there we are, by Madeline Miller. The NEA Big Read is a program of the National Endowment of the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest. All of the programs that we're offering this year are listed in our event calendar, and they are all based on various themes that are in the book, including this evening's presentation. The NEA Big Read Attleboro is organized by a coalition of community partners that comprises our One Adventure, One Book, One Community, also known as the One ABC Committee. Tomorrow evening, the Literacy Center is hosting a Life of Journeys, also on Zoom. On Tuesday, Bristol Community College is presenting Professor Michael Geary's lecture on Odysseus, Revered, Reviled, and Still Relevant. And on Thursday, just a week from tomorrow, October 8th, and Unlucky Story, the bookstore, is hosting our keynote presentation with the author, Madeline Miller, in conversation with Dr. Kevin Kalish from Bridgewater State University. Learn more about all of these upcoming free programs by visiting our NEA Big Read Attleboro website. It's attleboros1abc.org. Again, I will put that in the chat for you. This Saturday, beginning at 9 a.m., we will be distributing free copies of Circe while they last, I might add, because it's a hot number, at the Attleboro Farmers Market at O'Connell Field in Capron Park. So stop by to pick up a copy along with a calendar, which I showed you, of all of our upcoming events. We were able to, thanks to the generous grant funding from not only the National Endowment for the Arts, also from Bristol County Savings Bank Foundation, the Friends of the Attleboro Public Library, the Attleboro Cultural Council in partnership with the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and the Rotary, put together quite a calendar of programs even in this time of COVID. So I do appreciate your participation. And I thank you for your attention. And please join me in a virtual round of welcoming applause for our speaker, Ellen Everett Hoffman. I will be the official. And Ellen has asked me to stay on screen. Normally I would minimize myself at this point, so I'll just sit here and smile.
Well, hello, everybody. I wish I could see your faces. It'd be very nice. But I know some of you are there. And this doing things virtually like this has turned out to be one of the unexpected perks of the COVID pandemic. Uh, I didn't expect to have any positive things come out of it, but I've been able to do talks like this in Ireland, England, all over the US without having to leave my office. Here I am. And I live in Belchertown. I live in an oak forest. I am a practicing druid, and I'm a full-time writer now. That's what I do. I'm not a trained witch, although I've been hanging out with witches for over 30 years now. A lot of my best friends are witches, and I've certainly been to a lot of festivals, many festivals over the last 30 years, going to rituals and ceremonies and doing workshops and classes and hanging out with witches. I did not expect to write a book about witches. That wasn't on my agenda. But then I went to a place called the Deja Brew Coffee House in Wendell. If anybody knows that place, I don't think it's there anymore, or it's been renamed. Anyway, I went there one day, and I heard a poet, Michael Mowry, read a poem, and it was about Mary Webster, who is the Witch of Hadley. And I mean, I live in Western Mass, and for some reason, I mean, I'd always heard about Salem, you know, everybody knows about Salem. And so I'm not going to dwell on Salem that much, because I recommend people go to Salem. You can hear talks there and, you know, take tours and get yourself familiar with what happened there. I'll talk about it a little bit, but he started talking about Mary Webster, and it just happened that I was working in Hadley at the time. And she's buried at Old Hadley Cemetery, which I used to drive by on my way to Northampton. If you go from Hadley to Northampton, you drive right by that cemetery, which I had no idea what it was. And then, you know, she was 5 minutes from where I worked, 17 minutes from my house. And then I thought, wow, I've lived in the valley here for over 30 years. And how come nobody talks about Mary Webster, you know? So I'm going to read a little bit of the poem that created the book, the poem that caused it all to happen. Just the beginning. He said, "Mary Webster, you're poor, not rich. And so you stand barefoot, accused. Someone must be blamed. You're a witch. You are a witch. In times like these, because before your door, you make hay carts tip and tumble of honest men on goodly errand, on the long slog of mud road that never drains, through your dooryard in the darkened bend, because you make their horses balk and oxen cease to draw, and ox carts shake and drovers' cattle spook. You make milk curdle and chimneys smoke and soap kettles boil over, and generally in wood or mowing, barnyard, hearthside, or highway, you, our Lord's good works, suspend, upend, till goodwives vexed curse, and yeomen bedeviled hop in unholy rage, from stone to stone, with unchristian thought, with rod or switch to beat or whip the fear of him from whom all good things come back into you, and break your unkind mischief. I, Mary Webster, in this meeting house you have not been seen this 12-month, on many a Sabbath day, to hear his wonder-working word. You have borne no witness, done no Christian deed, and now of witchcraft you are under strong suspicion." And it's a whole chapbook. It's one poem that's an entire book. So that's just the beginning. But Mary Webster, well, she had the misfortune of being poor. And, you know, as I was researching, I figured out some of what was going on. But in the colonies, if your husband died, say you were a widow, or you happened to be poor for some reason, the community was responsible. So the church would gather, I guess, you know, food, clothing, money, whatever, and they would distribute it to the poor. Now, if you're a good Christian, isn't that what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to take care of the poor and the sick and all that. Well, people resented it. They didn't like it. And so if you were poor, you were automatically not liked. So what they said about her was that if anybody tried to go by her door, the horse would not, it would stop and then not go any further unless they went into the house and beat her up. And this is what they did. They would go into the house, beat her, and then the horse would continue, or the ox cart or whatever. So they decided she must be a witch because the animals, you know, weren't cooperating. And what eventually what happened was they decided to hang her, and she's called Half-Hanged Mary. That's her name. They took her out in the snow and they hung her from a tree and they left her there for 12 hours. They came back and she was still alive. They cut her down and she was alive. And so they threw her in a snowbank and left her there. Now, the only thing I can figure is the snow must have been deep and maybe her toes were touching the snow. I don't know. But because she survived being hung, they didn't try again. They left her alone. Anyway, what I'm going to do now, that's the Witch of Hadley. I'm going to go into the background of, you know, what happened here in New England was kind of the last cry, or the dernier cri, you know, the end of the witch persecution. After Salem, everybody was so ashamed, they just put a stop to it, really. And I do think that's maybe why Massachusetts is kind of liberal to this day, because I think people were so horrified at what they had just done. But there's a long history. And again, I've, you know, when I was studying the history, I got back as far as 1400 BC. That's as far back as I could get because that was the earliest written account. But the more I thought about it, I realized that, and I hope I don't, you know, usually somebody gets mad at me. So if you get mad, you can put a question in the Q&A. But it took about 1,000 years to convert the Europeans to Christianity. So during that 1,000-year period, a lot of stuff happened. It wasn't all peaceful. And again, I'm not going to get into all of that, but especially in areas like France, it was really bad. And during those 1,000 years, gradually people were converted, and it wasn't pretty. So I think this whole witch persecution, part of it is the sociology of the old woman, the poor woman, the old person, the gay person, the Jew. They were all being persecuted because they were different. But I think it was also the kind of the birth pangs of Christianity. And so the way I look at it, and you can get mad at me if you want, but Christianity is a Middle Eastern religion, comes from the Middle East, has the mores of the Middle East, the position of women, you know, up until very recently, when you went into church, your head had to be covered, you know, and of course, all during the Middle Ages and after that, even in Puritan times, you know, women had to cover up. That was a Middle Eastern idea. You still see that in, you know, Arab countries and Egypt, and that's where all this came from. So before that, Europeans were a forest dwelling, primarily, culture. Women, there were some very powerful women, but women, maybe they didn't have exactly the same rights as men everywhere. They did in some places, especially Scandinavia. But you know, the women had rights of divorce, which they didn't get, well, we didn't get back until within the last century, right? They had rights of inheritance. And we lost all of that. That was lost when the missionaries came in, and we're still trying to get it back. So I think that this whole witch thing is just a big illustration of the struggle that was going on between the old religion and then the new one that came in. So if anybody has problems with that, feel free to ask a question. All right, so I'm going to go into the timeline, and then I'm going to go into modern witchcraft, because I have quite a bit of notes here about what it is to be a witch. I understand you've been reading a book about that. I haven't read the book that you read, but so first of all, you hear the term 9 million witches were burned. That's not really true. Anywhere from 40,000 to 300,000 is the estimate of how many people, so-called witches, and most of them were Christian, by the way. They were accused as witches, but that's how many were killed in Europe anyway. But so what were they using? There's a line in Exodus, and the way it was translated, it says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Exodus 22:18. Leviticus 20:27. "A man also or a woman that hath a familiar spirit, or that is a wizard, shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones, their blood shall be upon them." So that's right in the Old Testament. So the word witch in the Old Testament, there's a lot of disagreement on what that word really is. The Hebrew is kashaf. I hope I'm saying it right. Anyway, that means to whisper. So somebody who whispers a spell. That's one meaning. Another meaning is evil sorceress, or a woman who uses spoken spells to harm others. And then there's a third translation, which is poisoner. So to me, it makes more sense when you say, "Thou shalt not suffer a poisoner to live." And as we get into the history, when the King James Bible came along and so on, there was terror of witches. So I think that's why they turned it into the word witch, but we don't know for sure. So what was happening around the time the Old Testament was being written? Previous to that, you had the Canaanite religion, which was polytheistic, and it had goddesses and gods. The goddesses, the main goddesses were Asherah and Astarte. The main gods were Baal and El. And it was an earth religion. It had earth festivals. So along comes the High Temple Hebrew patriarchal religion. So having a patriarchal religion where the deity is male and the priests are male is very different from having a polytheistic, earth-centered religion that honors goddesses. So the patriarchal High Temple male religion had to suppress or get rid of the Canaanite goddess worshiping religion. So that was, and they were the ones that wrote the Old Testament. That's the High Temple